Good night. Have one done tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Michelle, Spiritual Divine. I'm here to give you a word on tonight. And the topic going to be a disagreement between Paul and Baltimore. They're two friends. They've been friends for quite a while, been in the ministry, and Baltimore was Paul's mentor. So this story going to be about Paul and Baltimore having a conflict. Paul did not want it more. John Mark is one person because he abandoned them before on the journey, the ministry journey. So Paul doesn't trust Mark. He feel like he won't be faithful. So after a sharp disagreement, but Baltimore took Mark anyway. So they decided. So this story is gonna be coming from Acts um, chapter 15, verse 36 through 41. Okay, one gonna say, sometime later, Paul said to Baltimore, "Let us go back and visit the brothers in all the town where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they are doing." So their ministry is like all over the world. So they had visited this church once before. So Paul came up with an idea. Let's go visit them again and see how everything is going. And so that's when they so gonna come up with a decision who gonna bring who. And Baltimore and John Mark is Baltimore cousin. So automatically, he gonna have a second heart having Mark to come travel along. So I have they decided to travel through the churches. They planning on their first ministry journey. So they went with their first journey. So the reason for their return is to the reason for their return is to have a group of Jews there, Pharisees there, consistent on the Gentiles to be circumcised, in order to be a Christian. So Paul wrote up a letter to bring to different churches, to let them know you don't have to be circumcised. So you got a group of Jews there trying to insist them that you have to be circumcised. So this second journey with Paul, he wrote letters for them to bring to different churches out there to let them know you don't have to be circumcised. So Peter testified that God would save faithful Jews and Gentiles regardless of whether they had been circumcised. So that's why he wrote the letter to let him know. He said he got that vision from God. Whether they don't have to be circumcised, they will be saved. So the apostles sent letters to the church's members explaining that circumcision was not necessary for the salvation. So that's the purpose of this second trip, to let them know you don't have to be circumcised. It's not necessary. Because remember, he had Jesus to come to sacrifice, for sins and everything else. So you don't need to get circumcised or kill sheep and all that kind of stuff no more. Didn't have to do all that no more. So this why Paul and Barnabas was traveling to the church's group of Jews to insist Gentiles to be circumcised. That telling them they had to be circumcised. But Peter testified that God is said it's not necessary to be circumcised. So we're gonna look at 37. Now here's where the disagreement about to take place. Baltimore wanted to take Mark, with them. Now, Mark is Baltimore cousin. So he wants to take him with them on their second journey. Now, Paul came up with this journey just to check up on the church, and also they got a group of people there trying to insist them on being circumcised. So he thinking him and Baltimore about to go. So he wants to bring Mark along. He wants to bring Mark along, and Paul felt a type of way with Mark. Because Mark abandoned them once before on their first journey. So Paul had proposed this second missionary trip with Baltimore to revisit the churches. The first trip, Mark, however, left them near the beginning of the trip. Now they ain't even hardly begin yet when Mark had left them. So this why Paul would be displeased of Mark coming a second time. I guess they don't want to be pleased. If somebody abandoned them just in the beginning of the ministry and they just up and left. So 38. But Paul did not think it was wise to take him because he had deserted them in the first journey and had not continued with them in the work. So he didn't put in no work the first time, because he had left. So he coming in the second time, so Paul he didn't put in work the first time. Why should he come when he abandoned us? So Paul feel like he don't need him. So Paul think Mark would do it again, abandon them and not put in the work. Ministry is work, and it's not easy. So we don't know if Mark got frightened or nervous or scared or didn't want to put in the work, but he left at the early part of their journey. And he did not put in no work. So 39, they had such a sharp disagreement that they part company. Baltimore took Mark and sailed for Cyprus. So their disagreement had them to start going two separate ways. They start going two separate ways. Because they had letters to bring to multiple churches. But they were supposed to do all that together. But since the disagreement, and you remember, Paul and Baltimore is good friends. So Paul still staying from their first trip. So it's like Paul still holding a grudge against Mark. So when Mark abandoned them before, Baltimore willing to give him a second chance. Passionate disagree. But both sides of the argument, Paul and Baltimore argued and they split up. Not seeing a way to continue to travel together, but they both went separate ways. Now they're friends, and sometimes it's not even good sometimes to work with friends, because when you have a disagreement on the job or on your journey, sometimes they'll put a rip between two friends, and sometimes that'd be hard to repair back together when you're trying to work together as friends or either in ministry. So a lot of times it's a whole lot of disagreement in the ministry. So now Paul and Baltimore was good friends until the disagreement would split them going two separate ways. So Paul and Baltimore was sent out from the same church ministry, and they traveled and taught and served God together. This is the relationship they had before they split. Baltimore was an outstanding model, of a sponsor and a Christian mentor for Paul. See, he was a mentor for Paul. So they was good friends. They served God together. They served in the same ministry. They did everything together. And now they rip apart and they're going separate ways. So now we don't hear too much about Baltimore. He is the same man that was in prison with Jesus. And when a crowd said, let Baltimore go. So Jesus was the one was still left in prison, and they let Baltimore go. And Baltimore, after Jesus' crucifixion, then Baltimore was an apostle. So he wasn't an apostle for Jesus, but he was an apostle after Jesus was departed. So that's why he was an apostle. They don't say he was a disciple. So 40. But Paul took Silas and they left, commended by the brothers to the grace of the Lord. So he took Silas with him, and Baltimore took Mark with him. And they went separate ways delivering the letters. See, they out delivering the letters to multiple churches in Gentile. So the partnership of Paul and Baltimore had come to an end. Paul no longer needs the son of encouragement to mentor him in teaching and evangelism. So that's what they do. They go to different churches and stuff like that, preach and encourage people. And anything go wrong, like they're doing, sending letters to, and letting them know about different things. So they did all that together, and Baltimore was his mentor. So Paul feel like he don't need him to mentor him no more. You know, Baltimore's talents are of more use for his cousin. So he was more looking out for his cousin than anything else. So Mark, who was grow, who Mark had to grow in faith, to even be traveling with Paul again. So that's what Paul said. Paul said he had to have faith to travel with him again. Because Paul feels type of way that, yeah, he's not faithful. He's not faithful at all. So there are disagreement between Paul and Barnabas. Best possible solution is for them to pursue God will separately. So it's a disagreement, and it's so bad that they both go separate ways and their relationship fell apart. So the best solution is both don't see God, but see God separate. See God separate. To come to some kind of agreement. So they can restore their friendship back again. So on 41, he went through Siren and Ceilings strengthened the churches. So they went and did what they said they was going to do. But they went two separate ways. So Paul is on the roll again. The church in Jerusalem has given him a letter explaining that Gentiles do not need to follow Messiah, the law, but should make some concession to strengthen their unity with Jews in their churches. So see the letter saying they don't have to be circumcised. The Gentiles do not need to follow the Messiah in law, but should make some decision in to strengthen their unity with Jews in the churches. So they have to be unity in the church. So a lot of times they have disagreement in the church. They have conflicts and everything else in the church. And they're not supposed to be that way. So Bartimaeus and Mark would take the letter to Siren, and Paul and Silas would take the letter to churches that Paul and Bartimaeus planned to go. The church that him and Bartimaeus really supposed to go at, Paul wound up and took Silas and going to the church. Bartimaeus took Mark and they going to another church delivering the letters. They just going two separate ways. Now we see even in a disagreement, the journey must still go on. You see how they had a disagreement, but the job still must go on. They still had to deliver the letters and stuff like that. They still had to go to the church. They couldn't go together. They still had to go, even if they're going separate. That's just like when you're going through your storm. Just because you're going through the storm, you can't just stay at home and cry all day. Life must still go on. Life must still go on. So they had to deliver letters to churches when they were supposed to do it together. Now they're going separate ways. And also the friendship had departed. So the letter about they don't have to be circumcised to be a Christian. So they had a group of Jews who were trying to assist them on that they have to be circumcised. So that's why Paul had to hurry up and get to all them churches and let them know you don't have to be circumcised. So the Apostle Paul and Barnabas face a conflict in their relationship. And that can't happen when you're trying to work together, either trying to do ministry together, and they've been doing it for years. But all of a sudden they come up with a conflict because of Mark. So Barnabas invite John, it's John Mark, to join them for the next mission work, but Paul disagreed sharply, and Paul chose Silas. Paul chose Silas, and Barnabas chose Mark, and they just did the journey separate. So we see that two friends cannot work together. So when you have a disagreement, you have conflicts and everything else, sometimes they tear up the relationship, and sometimes it be hard to restore back. So they both had to come to a solution to try to seek God, for guidance, and they had to do it separate. You know, one, I have a group of Jews insisted that they get circumcised to be a Christian. Just trying to make the people be circumcised. Talking about you had to be circumcised to be a Christian. So too, Paul wrote a letter to the churches that they don't have to be circumcised. He got this word from God. So 2, 3. Paul and Barnabas had a disagreement due to he want Paul to come along. That he want Paul to come along, but Paul disagreed that he didn't want Paul to come along. So Paul have a problem with Paul and seem like he hold a grudge. He still remember what Paul did. Because he abandoned them the first journey before they even got installed. He abandoned them. He ain't put no work in. So Paul like, I don't want him firing up. We about to put in some work. They're not only just delivering letters. Paul preached wherever state he at. Because just like he said, we gonna check up on them. Because the last time they check up on them, he wants to see if everything is still okay. So 5. Paul disagreed, and they went separate ways, and also their relationship had departed. 5. There was friends and fell apart, but later on, their friendship restored back together. I guess after they had the conversation with God. So 1, you have to be faithful on your journey and put in the work. So he felt like Mark was not faithful and Mark did not put in the work. So you have a bit of evangelists. You have to put in the work. And that's what they were, evangelists. And then they was gone all over, checking up on churches, and they encourage people. That's what evangelists do. They go everywhere and encourage people. So they have to encourage the people and give them strength, to let them know you don't have to be circumcised. So 2, we see that friends cannot work together. We see the conflict happen, the disagreement happen, and we saw that they went to different churches, to deliver the letter when they all supposed to go together. So Paul feel like Mark will not be faithful. So it's like Paul holding a grudge, and he feel a type of way with Mark, and he refused to let Mark travel with him. He rather go separate, than to go along with Mark. So if Mark abandoned and abandoned Barnabas, that gonna be on him, not on Paul. Paul refused to travel with Mark, and Paul also said he will have to grow and be faithful for him to follow Paul ever again. That's the words that Paul said. He said he had to be faithful, to follow him, and that's how it is. I know I preached on that months ago about this church here. They say they're gonna sell the property and give the money. They ain't say they're gonna get the money. Everybody else said they're gonna give all the money to sell their property and stuff. So they assume he was gonna give all the money, but he chose not to. He gave him part of the money. And when you're in church, you got to be faithful. If you feel like you can't, do what you need to do, say something at the beginning. You have to be faithful, in this ministry, because not only faithful to the people in church, you have to be faithful to God. And your Holy Spirit play a part of it too. So we see that they Paul came into a decision to travel to see the church that they visit once before, and also he heard that a group of people trying to insist the people to be circumcised, You know, so Paul got the vision from he said from God, you know, from Jesus, that they don't have to be circumcised. You know, so Paul wrote up a letter to bring to different churches and let them know that that's not true. You don't have to be circumcised to be a Christian. You know, and the person had, you know, a group of people, of Jews was just trying to make them be circumcised. And, you know, we see that two friends have fell apart, relationship have fell apart, you know, disagreement, because we see Baltimore, Mark was Baltimore cousin, you know, but Paul and Baltimore were friends, so you see that blood was thicker than water, you know. He chose his cousin over Paul, and no matter how Paul felt it, Baltimore still chose his cousin to bring along with him, you know. And so a lot of time, when you're in this ministry and they're doing that ministry but Jesus had told his disciples, you know, that I'm about to be departed, you know, but the ministry still have to go on. So he told them, keep on doing what he was doing, you know, and so they're doing, they're picking up what Jesus was doing. You know, so and they've been doing an excellent job, you know, going all over preaching and stuff like that. But now they come to a bridge of disagreement with two friends. You know, so we see that two friends cannot work together. Two friends can't be in a ministry together. You know, and Paul hold a grudge because Mark was not faithful. You know, he was not faithful. You know, so and we see that Baltimore chose his cousin over Paul. You know, it doesn't matter how Baltimore feel like how Paul feel about the situation. Baltimore didn't care. He still took Mark anyway. You know, so I hope y'all enjoy this word. And remember, even in the church, there's always conflict and disagreement. You know, not only just on the job, you know, in the church too, we have conflicts and everything else. You know, but you always, just like they had when I read, they said the only solution was for both of them to seek God separate, and that's the only way you can kind of, you know, control your conflict or your disagreement in the church is to seek God. You know, He the only one will give you peace and a solution on what to do. You know, so I hope you enjoyed this word, and I'll see y'all on the next video.